Hi and welcome to another coding along session for Web 2. My name is Mike de Rijke and I'm a lecturer at Erasmus Hogeschool Brussels. Now, what are we going to be making today? You see it on the right side. If I refresh, you will see a very nice loading icon, and when everything is there, it disappears. We will be building a very small web app, a Pokemon team builder, just to get some basic ES6 JavaScript going. Now, what does it do? It loads in 150 Pokemon, the first 150, Gen 1, if you will, up until Mew. And we can add them to our team. So if I add them to a team, I get a success message, and then the text below it says has the following to Pokemon, Bulbasaur. Of course, we want to have the 3, Charmander and Squirtle. We have 3 Pokemons here. If I want to add the same one, I get an error that it's already part of the roster. And if I go further, I have 6. So as you know, in Pokemon, you can have 6 Pokemon in your team. If you want more, then the roster is full. So that's the basic gist of it. Let's get going. Let's see how we can use this. And so this, of course, is the result. We're going to be building it together. Now, first, let's see where we or how we can prepare ourselves before we are getting data from an API. So what we have here is one index.html and a script.js. This is more than enough for the beginning parts of it. The first steps would be to have a basic HTML page. So I will let you create it. I will put a dummy in here, and then I will add some Bootstrap for me. So if you want to use Bootstrap, by all means, go ahead. I will add it here, and I will add some basic divs to add the data in. So in this case, I will replace the body with a class container that makes everything in the middle. Web 2 session 2 is my name of the course, but of course this is just a regular exercise. So Web 2 Pokemon building app. We're gonna close the finished one that keeps updating, and we are starting from here. So I have 2 divs ready, messages and team. The team is where everything from the Pokemon is going to be. We're going to be inserting them below here. And then I also have a div called list, and that's where the list of the Pokemon comes into play. So as you might so it is Flexbox. So if you don't want to create the HTML yourself, just pause here, take over the details here, and then we can continue towards the script. All right, we have the script. It's empty for now. Of course, how do we gonna start? We are going to start by adding some basic info, as in the data from the API. Which API are we going to be using? We are going to be using the Pokemon API. If we go to the site itself, PokéAPI.co, you can have try it now here. So we can ask for a specific Pokemon. Ditto, we can use the ID. So the first one is Bulbasaur, type, ability. But the one that we are interested in is the Pokemon list. And here it limits it to 100 and starts from 200. So what we are going to do, we're going to be adjusting the URL quite a bit and saying we want the first 151. Submit. So that means I get a result here with all the Pokemon. Now there is something special about it. Let's worry about that later. This is the URL. Now we're going to be using basic fetch then commentary methods here. No async, no await. That's for later courses or later exercises. But just a regular fetch then. So to be clean, I want everything into a function called getData. And starting with it, I want to pass a URL in it so I can keep using. No, we're gonna be using a straight up the URL inside here. So going bigger, since I have everything, I can close this. And we are going to be fetching the data and logging it to our console. We should be seeing it here once this is done. Fetch. Fetch, of course, requires a URL. This is the URL. And we are going to be listening to it. Apparently, I still using some style sheet. I don't have a style sheet. Remind that there's going to be some mistakes in this course, of course, but we are going to be fixing them together. Then, next part is the response. So, let me check response. And then resp.json. And then, of course, .then. And we will have the data. And see what we have. I will explain it in a second once I have data to show. Building it up. Index is script.js. Let me check. All right. Of course. The very basic thing, of course, if we create a function, you have to call that function. And now we can look very hard for errors, but this is not an error. This is just me being confused. So again, what do we get back? Count 1,118. I think that's the total number of Pokemon. That doesn't interest me. But an array in the results property gives me 151 Pokemon. So I can start using something and building something with this data. Now, the issue here is that the Pokemon array itself only has objects with two properties. It has a name and it has a URL. Now, if we click on that URL, we get all the data of the Pokemon itself. And more specifically, if you think back on the results that we are trying to get, we want that picture. So from default, for example, we want this pretty pixelated Bulbasaur. We want that picture on here. So that means for each of the Pokemon that we get back in this list, we have to call an additional fetch call or do an additional request to get all the specific data for the Pokemon. Okay, so how do we go about it? Well, we will prepare some variables so we can keep working with it, so we don't have to keep retrieving it. So list, the list equals an empty array in the beginning, and then the Pokemon itself, that's going to be in here. So this will be a list of Pokemon objects, and this will be the actual list with the individual URLs. So here we will fill in list equals data.results, I thought it was, or result, yeah, results. And then we will loop over this one and fill in the Pokemon. So list.forEach, for each, and then we will do a fetch call with the element URL. Fetch element.url. When we have that, we will do the same logic here. Get the response. I will call it P for Pokemon. And the only thing I'm going to do with the P is Pokemon.push P. That's it. For now, that is it. So this means, again, just clearly looping over everything. When this is done, after the get data, I will wait a couple of seconds. So I will do a set timeout. Not set interval, set timeout. And I will log a log function after 3 seconds. The only thing that does is console log the Pokemon list. Voila. And we saw it this show here. So as you can see, these are 151 objects of, for example, the second one is Ivysaur. I know that the 9th one, or at least I think it's 8 with the 0, is Blastoise, as we can see here. So we have all the Pokemon details that we need, including the pictures. So if we want here, we have a fancy Blastoise coming our way. Good. So let's recap what we did. We got a get data function. We called a URL to get some data. That data has been converted into JSON, and then we can work with it. Of course, we have the results. The results only contain a name and a specific URL per Pokemon. So for that list, we are going to loop over it. And then for each URL, we're going to get the specific details of that Pokemon and put it into the array. That means after this list is complete, so after the timeout, we're gonna use a simple timeout here for reasons that will be explained in later colleges or in later courses. Then we can build the UI. So that's getting the data. We have it in the console log. Now we can add it to the web page. All right, I have prepped my HTML for some cards to be added to my web page. So for example, you see an empty card here with no image, which we are going to be filling in, a name, just type Pikachu there, the type of the Pokemon, and then a button to add to the team. Now, what we want is to get a button, or at least a card for each Pokemon on the screen. So I'm going to copy this, just place it in comments because we're not going to be using it here. But we are going to add, you're going to add the data here. So the once build list. And then, of course, call it build list. I'm just going to put this in comment for now because otherwise it's going to keep running. And we are going to loop over everything. So in our build list, we are looping over the Pokemon list. At that point, it is filled up. So Pokemon, and we are going to build an HTML string. Let's do it another way, just to see some variations on loop systems, of course. Pokemon for off, and each time we loop over Pokemon, we add something to the HTML, which we at the end going to import into the list. We're going to set the inner HTML to that. So let's try it. HTML. Always add to it. So plus equals backticks and then the HTML you just copied. And then we're going to fill this in with template literals. So the first div we don't need. These are regular divs. Let me check if we are correct. This is one div. I think we have one too many. Voila. If you really want to be readable, that's the way we go. So the source would be, if we look at the code. So again, we will let the log speak for itself. If we go to the Pokemon API and we click on a Pokemon, and we get one specific one, we know that the data of the picture is in the property sprites, and then let's just take front default. Okay, So that means if I'm looping in here, $, and I can do P, which is the variable I create here. This has a Pokemon. We decided it's going to be in sprites, so sprites. And then we need front underscore default. So we are injecting data from the list that we got into the HTML. The name, again, p dot, I would assume name. Yes, name. The types we're going to leave like that for now, and add to the team is also good. Now, we're going to prep this immediately. Why? Because each button will need to be reacting differently. So if I click on one button, I need to know which button I clicked. So an easy trick to do with that is add an ID, a unique ID to this. And you know what? Every Pokemon has a unique ID. Namely, first one is Bulbasaur, ninth one is Blastoise, third one is Venusaur. Everyone has a unique ID in the list. So we're going to add the ID here. And this will make more sense the moment we add the event listeners. So we've built an HTML string, and now we're going to add it to our web page. Document.getOnById. I think it was called list. .inner HTML, that's the one we're going to change, and we're going to add this HTML to it. Now let's test it. Voila. And comment 1, 2, 3. And as you can see, it works. Apparently, there is something wrong with the divs, so maybe the last div. So this is 1, 2, 3, et voila. Now we have all the beautiful Pokemon in here. And if we were to inspect the elements, you would see that this one has ID 2. And if I were to click on Beedrill, this one has ID 15. So this makes it easier for later to get everything out of it and add the event listeners. We shall do that by now. And add the we'll do the event listeners later. We have our functionality to show our Pokemon. That's good. We know how this works, DOM manipulation and everything. Now the next step would be to let's build a class to combine all the information, all the logic needed for this team builder application. All right, so building some functionality for the website, we are going to be segmenting it off into a separate class and then import it with, of course, export and import. Why do we do this? Well, because, of course, in the Web 2 course, at this part, we learned about classes, so it might be useful to use a class here as well. So team.js, we will create a new file. Now, if we create a new class, we have multiple ways of doing this. No, we don't have a lot of ways, but we have multiple ways of exporting it. We will use the standard way of exporting it. So export, default, and then of course the keyword we need is class team. So I will kill this for a second just in case that we don't need we are only going to be working in this team class for this segment of the video. Now export default class team, and then open the brackets. Team is capitalized, of course, in here. Now, each good class has a constructor. So let's start with that. Constructor. And we're going to place some default values in here. So each team has a team name, it has a trainer name, and it has a roster, like a Pokemon roster. So if we would add a team name property to it, this dot team name, and let's just give it the Kanto team, which is the region of the first Pokemon game. This dot trainer. Ash, of course, is the first Pokemon trainer in that anime. And we would like to control all the Pokemons we have in an array, and we will leave that blank for now because he doesn't have any Pokemon in it yet. We are immediately going to be working with the objects. So we have two features that we would like to add in this team class. One of them being, spewing back a string that just says, this is Team Kanto with Trainer Ash, and he has the following Pokemon in his roster. ... Okay, now we can add a function. We're going to call it a describe function because we're going to describe the team, of course. We can create the names, the string. I'm just going to return a very easy string here for now. I'm just going to copy it. Et voila. Team, this team name with trainer. This trainer has the following Pokemon. And of course, we will do that later because we don't know how our data is going to look yet in this roster. So good for now. This does what it needs to do. But the second part is more important, namely adding a Pokemon to the roster. Now, of course, we are going to get these types of objects here on the right side, as you can see. So we need to be able to receive a Pokemon. So we add a parameter in the function, and then we can add it to the roster. It can be as simple as this, this dot roster and dot push and the P. And this should be enough for the list that we want to complete. Error handling can come later. So now that we know that these P objects are going into this roster, we can update the description and then create a decent string. So for example, if we go with the description, we know that these are all objects. So we can loop over the roster and we can push the names into a string. So let names is an empty array, and we can do this dot roster dot for each Pokemon, and we can just do names dot push. And what are we going to add? We are going to add the Pokemon name. So now before we create the string, we can actually just get all the names out of it because now we know what type is in there. It's this object. We only want the names, so we are going to fill a temporary variable with all the names, and then we can use something called the spread operator, as in ... names. We need to add the square brackets to tell it this is an array, and then ... triple dot will spread them out with a comma in between, and we will have a very clean string. Now, of course, we have this team just built. This is all fun and games, but of course, until we import it into Script.js, we don't know what the result will be. So let's import it into the main script and get everything hooked up on the front end. All right, we are back into our script, and now we can actually just import the team in here. So we have created the team file, so that means we can do import team from team.js. All right, perfect. Let's see if nothing pops up. Okay, and then we can create a new team. Let's call it team1 equals new team. That way we can use it. And then I'm gonna minimize these features because we don't need them for now. And we will build the list and update the team itself. So we can do a describe function or a refresh team. Let me check. So refresh team. You'll notice in a second while I'll put this in a new text. So below here, remember in index we have a div called team, and then we will add the describe function in there. So document.getElementById is name team, sorry, team dot inner text. I'm just gonna do the inner text. Oh, you know what? We're gonna clean it up, inner HTML, and we're gonna make it a P paragraph in team. Where is it? So P, and then at the end we will add clean code is everything. So save it, go to script, and then team1 dot describe. This will return the string. And of course, if you want to run it, text undefined with trainer Ash has the following Pokemon. So undefined is somewhere in there. Team name doesn't have a capital N, so that's an error we can fix by doing this. Team Kanto with trainer Ash has the following Pokemon. Perfect. Now that we have integrated the team in there, we can add Pokemon to it. Now, before we can do that, we need to build event listeners. Now, how do we build event listeners? We add them after the list has been built. So in here, add event listeners. So the thing here is that we can add an event listener to each button, or do it up there for bubbling. So we are going to be adding a event listener for each button, because the buttons are unique, like we prepared before with the ID. So I'm going to document query selector, document.query selector all to get every one of them. Which ones are we going to take? My case .btn. So the button itself has a class btn. It's an A. Again, this is Bootstrap. If you have buttons, don't worry about it. Just make sure you have a class with which you can select them all. So in this, the query selector, it's easy in this way because you can loop over this very easily for each button. Let's go. I will create a bit more room. So for each button, I will need to add an event listener on click. So button.add event listener. We'll do it for click. Of course, we need the event because we need to know which button is clicked. And let's test this out for now. Console log, and let's go event. And I might let you search on this, but I will already mention, if we want to know which element triggered the event, we can go target, and then we have the element, and we can go even deeper and just get the ID. So normally now, only with this, we will get a console log for every button we click. Let's try that. 2, 1, 4, 3. So that works perfectly. Now, the moment we have that ID, we can retrieve the Pokemon from the Pokemon list here. We can do this with some sort of a find function. So there is an array function called find. So let's P, so the Pokemon we are going to be retrieving. We take our array, we do a find. And how does a find work? Well, it asks for a callback function. So element. And then you need to have a statement here. It will return the first, an expression. It will return the element for which the expression is true the first time. So if the element in the array, if that ID equals to event.target.id. So again, this is the Pokemon in the list. It goes looping over every one of them. If that equals, of course, double equals, to the button that is being pressed, then we have our Pokemon. Good. Now we can test that, but I will immediately go forward because I know that this will work. Ignorance is bliss as well. And then we will do team1.add Pokemon. Add Pokemon, and we will pass along the P. Once that is done, I can just do refresh team, and it will immediately do a new describe. Refresh team. And let's see if that works. Bulbasaur, and it's being added perfectly. Ivysaur, it's being added perfectly. Venusaur, it's being added perfectly. So we have now created the list. We have made our buttons unique. We have created a team with all sorts of functionality. And we have added the basic functionality to adding those Pokemon to the list. Nice. Of course, there's one other thing we need to do, and that is build in alerts. Alerts when the roster is full, alerts when there are duplicates. So we focus that feature on the team class because everything put in here is a bit much. So we will move most of it to the class. You kind of have to have a healthy separation of getting logic and data into your classes, and DOM manipulation is in this. Never go editing the DOM inside your class. This should be a separate part of it. So in add Pokemon, we will have, let me check. In add Pokemon, we will have the roster push, but of course there needs to be some validation for this. A very easy way of doing this is just returning a message each time I add a Pokemon. So returning a message, I'm just gonna kill this first. Let message, and that message will have a value or a text value if it were. Gonna be E, and then a type. Is it a successful message or so it will be an error for now, or success. And then we can handle that in our script depending on what comes back. Now we have multiple things need to do. If the roster is full, we need to return the message. So I'm going to copy paste two of them in here. And this should be more than enough for now. So let's go over it. If this roster length, if it equals to 6, then the roster is full. I adjust the message and I return it. Done. If we find the same Pokemon, again, it's the same find element. If we find the same Pokemon in the roster, then we say this Pokemon is already part of the roster and return. And otherwise, if it's correct, then and only then we will add it to the roster. So we add it to the roster. If these two succeed, we come to this, and this means success. And we're going to be adding a message value. The Pokemon something has been successfully added, I think, to the team. The type we change to success, and we return the message. So we have all this logic in here that we can now use with add Pokemon. If we go back, add Pokemon will return a message. So let's just make it a global variable. Oops. And message. Okay, perfectly. And now we will be, each time we refresh the team, we will update the alerts as well. So if we get a message, then we will add, we will create an alert box and add stuff like that to it. So I will copy in some code, give me a moment, and then we will go over it. Good. So we are creating an alert box. It's a div element. It has the class alert to it and an attribute role alert. Again, this is to prep the Bootstrap div. Now, the cool thing comes from the moment my message.type. If message.type equals success, then we add an alert success clause. And this is something, again, from Bootstrap that colors it green. If it is not a success, we color it red. We add the message, again, message.value, and we can actually just get the text that we build in the team.js and place it in here, in the inner text, and then we add it to the DOM. So we clean it first, inner HTML clean it, and then do a clean append child and append the box to it. This should be it normally. Let's see if it works. It doesn't. Oh, I stopped the server, of course. See, these are the things that you can code as much as you want, as good as you want, but then it has undefined. We can change that by value. And then the type. Let's try something else. The type is, if the type is not empty. So we only build this if there is a type. If message.type. And then we build this. Save. This looks much cleaner. If I now add Bulbasaur, the Pokemon Bulbasaur has been successfully added to the team. If I try again, the Pokemon is already part of your roster. If I add 6, this roster is full. So now we have a complete application with everything we need for this exercise, even some extras to finalize it. So I hope you learned something. Try to experiment with this, try to add more features to it, figure out the types, because that's a very fun thing to chew upon. It's a bit of a looking at the data that you get back. For example, here the types. Some Pokemon have 2 types, some have 1 types, but it always is returned in an array. So it's a good training to learn to work with that weird of data and then get everything up and running. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.